Hey nerds, what's going on? Today I'm going to sculpt the Master Chief skin from the Fall Guys video game. This skin was available in Fall Guys for a short time in early July of this year, and since I missed my opportunity to get the skin in the game, and because I'm a glutton for punishment, I decided to create it for myself using polymer clay. Boom! So the first thing I'm going to do is jump into the Googlies and find me some tasty reference images. This one looks like a good starting point, so I'll grab that, pull it into Photoshop, and use my digital magics to resize the image and remove the background so I can print it out and get started. Next, I'm going to grab a Sharpie and sketch out a set of intricate plans for the skeleton of our Master Chief. Then I'll use some 12 gauge aluminum craft wire and a pair of pliers to build the skeleton. Then I'll join the two halves together by wrapping a length of thinner 28 gauge wire around the spine, and then I'll be set to bulk out our bulbous body with some aluminum foil. The foil allows me to keep my model lightweight, while at the same time saving me quite a bit of clay. So once I've sufficiently bulked out the torso area, I'll throw on a thin layer of Super Sculpty medium blend polymer clay, not a sponsor, and once I've got that smoothed out, I'll start layering on the armor, in this case wrapping a long narrow strip of clay around the waist and then blending the bottom edge in with the base layer, giving us the illusion of a nice pair of armor-plated diapers. Then I'll cut out a small rectangular piece of clay to add a bit of detail, and then I'll temporarily cover the clay with plastic wrap while I carve some extra detail into the surface. A few more details added to the back, including but not limited to a poopy flap for the armored diapers, and I'm ready to move on to the chest piece. At this point, I'm going to jump back into Photoshop and outline a few details so I can print it out and easily transfer the shapes onto the clay. Then I'll layer these shapes onto the torso of our protagonist one at a time, keeping an eye on my reference photos to help with placement. One thing I should point out is that this is my third attempt at sculpting Master Chief. I'm still relatively new to the world of sculpting and working with clay, so I'm still trying to figure out my process. For my first attempt, I tried using colored Fimo clay so I wouldn't have to paint afterwards, but I didn't get very far with that before I realized that the clay was a little too soft for what my big clumsy hands could handle. So I switched to Sculpey Medium Blend, and I was making really good progress, but when I finished up the torso and threw it in the oven to harden, it came out warped and cracked in a couple of spots, so I had to start over once again. So here I am placing the chest piece that I just cut out, and I'm realizing that I'm going to need something for the shouldery bits of the armor to rest on. So I'll add a couple more lumps of clay to fill out the shoulders, and I'll blend it in with the rest of the torso. On the back side of Master Chief's armor, just above his iron underoos, I noticed a small textured area, and even though I'm not trying to perfectly replicate all of the details, I thought this might be a fun bit to try out. And what better way to get diamond-shaped texture than using the diamond-shaped texture on my sculpting tools. So I'll simply roll on the texture, add another strip of clay for extra detail, then attach these new details to the back of our torso, and as always, I'll blend it in. Then, after adding a couple more small details to the torso, I'll get started with the helmet. Here, to get the shape of the bottom of the helmet, I'm using the top of the template that I used for the chest. This will give me a nice snug fit when I attach the front of the helmet to the face. Once that's done, I've got a few more pieces to cut out and attach to the head in order to complete the helmet. Once everything's in place, I'll use the old saran wrap trick again as I carve some lines into Master Chief's visor. Now I didn't mention this before, but the saran wrap is there to help keep our lines extra clean and to prevent our shaping tools from shaving off little bits of clay. So after the helmet's finished, I'll add a couple more small details to the armor, and then it's on to the steel-toed work boots. And then once we're done with the feet, it's time to throw this guy in the oven at 275 degrees for about half an hour. Here I've arranged the armature wire in a salute, and I've wrapped some thinner 28 gauge wire around the original wire to give the clay something to hold on to when I start attaching the arms. So I'll roll out a couple of giant clay snakes for the arms, and then I'll slice them down the middle lengthwise so that I can open them up and wrap them around the armature. Then I'll bulk out the shoulder area a little bit and blend in the clay with the rest of the body. Next, I've got a few details to add to the arm, so I'll get started on that without paying any attention to what my camera is looking at. Then I'll use Sculpt Bacon Bond to attach these details to the shoulder, and then it's time to make some hands. Now the Fall Guys characters have some big beefy hands, so these should be fairly easy to create. I'll just roll out a vaguely hand-shaped ball of clay, make some cuts for the fingers, and roll the fingers around a little bit until they look sausagey. Then I'll add the thumb, poke a giant wrist hole in the bottom of the hand, and attach it to the armature. Then I've got a couple of bands to add to the arms, and we're ready to throw our beloved Spartan back into the oven for another half hour. Once he's cooled down, I'm going to throw on a layer of primer, and then I'll get started painting the armor. I chose blue instead of the traditional green because I'm a grown man and I can do whatever I want. And besides, I really liked this picture right here. With the initial coat finished and dried, I'm going to darken my blue paint by mixing in a little black. And I'm going to use this darker shade of blue to create a wash. And all that means is that I'm going to water down this dark blue paint and then brush that watered down paint over the original layer. Then I'll immediately take a paper towel and wipe off the paint I just added. This will get rid of most of the wash, but there will be enough dark blue left behind in the cracks and creases to add a sense of depth and weathering to the otherwise bright blue armor. This technique is also sometimes referred to as antiquing because it dulls the color beneath it and makes the surface look older. Now once I've finished this wash layer, then I'm going to dry brush a lighter blue over the entire surface of the armor. To achieve this, you simply apply paint to the brush, wipe off as much of that paint as possible, and then lightly fan the paintbrush over the surface of the clay. This helps to highlight the edges and add even more depth to the armor. Next, I'm going to pull out some black paint, and I'm going to paint the shoes, arms, hands, and Master Chief's prodigious midsection. Then, once the black paint dries, I'm going to dry brush over it a couple different shades of gray to give the surface a little bit of depth and variety. Last but not least, I'm going to mix some orange, yellow, and red paint for the visor. Once the first layer is done, I'm going to once again give it a weathered look with a wash of darker orangey brown. And once that dries, I'll dry brush the surface with a hint of yellow. The last thing I'm going to do is to apply a thin layer of UV resin to the visor. A few seconds under the glow of a UV flashlight and the resin will harden, giving the visor a shiny, reflective look. So let's see how we did. If you have any ideas for other sculptures you'd like to see, please leave a comment below. And if you liked the video, please consider clicking the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, help us out by clicking the big red subscribe button below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you nerds next time.